Okay. Okay, let's talk about taxation for a little bit. Since you said it cannot be regulated, I'll try to find loopholes and use cases where government has to come and regulate. For example, either of you tax lawyers?
No, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a hacker.
Oh, you're a hacker. You are a
I have some I'm not a tax specialist, but I have some understanding of tax.
Nobody understands tax. I understand that I am very good in Excel and math, but I still जब taxation करने बैठता हूँ CA को call करता हूँ भाई मेरा tax file कर दे. Anyway, so you understand how the stock market works, right? And any options that you get from the company is also taxable in your hand, right? But Bitcoin में nothing is taxable. So in a case, and my boss is in the room, if I go to my boss and say कि यार मेरे को payment ना Bitcoin में तू कर, and my boss agrees to it, I know he won't. How would it be taxed?
I mean, there is no way that I personally buy the argument that, if you are paid in Bitcoin, you're not taxed. Of course, you're taxed. The difference is the government has no enforcement mechanism currently to monitor what you're receiving or what you're paying through Bitcoin. That is the only difference.
If I start transacting, you and me start transacting in Bitcoin, then we are skipping tax. Then we are not paying tax to the government, right?
No.
I'll say let's start doing that.
Okay, we may not be paying tax to the government, but we are still liable to pay tax to the government. So at the end of the day,
They can retro tax me.
not exactly. In a sense, yes, but the point being that you have to, in your books of accounts, you have to account for that cryptocurrency as INR equivalent. So you can't just say, I have received cryptocurrency.
There is no INR equivalent. The conversion is through dollars. And people told me here in the morning, जब भी आप जाइएगा ये बताइएगा कि blockchain कोई नहीं देख सकता, encrypted है, तो government कैसे देखेगी? Private की तो मेरे पास है.
Yeah.
Sir, in case when cash करा दे Zep में cash करा ले, then it probably comes.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is that the liability does not disappear. Okay, the only problem is the government currently doesn't know what you're doing with the cryptocurrency, and they have no means to make you accountable. They don't have evidence to say that this guy is sitting on 5 lakh of Bitcoin, which has now inflated to 15 lakhs, so he has to pay capital gains on 10 lakhs. That mechanism is not there, but because the technology is so nascent and the government itself, as he mentioned, right, as Jiten mentioned, is made up of 60-year-old people who barely do not, cloud computing was something they didn't get till like 3-4 years back. So, one evolves, and once they perhaps take the effort to develop tools which can create some kind of monitoring mechanism, I think sooner or later it will happen. I find it hard to believe that, this sort of system where people can transact and still not be accountable to tax. I don't believe this is going to happen, at least in the long term. Maybe right now, but not in the long term.
Okay. With that, we'll just open to the audience. You had a point.
Yeah. So my point is, sir, if somebody gets his salary or his or her salary through a Bitcoin, right? And if he goes to Zeppay as a platform, might be sounding naive, but then he gets it in cash and the account is linked, the money gets transferred to his account, right? So as a tax implication, what will it be? So for example, if I, and that gets inflated as well. So I get, 1 Bitcoin and gets inflated and the money goes up. What would be the tax implication? Because it is coming into my account which is being linked, right? I have filed a return for that.
Okay, so the incidence of tax, right? The point where you are liable to pay tax happens here at 2 places. One is when you receive your salary, that you're taxable to salary. The second point is when you sell the higher priced Bitcoin on the exchange and then receive the capital gains. So there are 2 steps here. The difference.
Yes.
But capital gains, now let me give a disclaimer. There is no precedent for this. This is purely our understanding of existing law on the books. It is, there is no court judgment, there is no government ruling to say that, that this is the manner in which it would be treated, but this, to us at least, is the most logical explanation. So when you sell the higher priced Bitcoin, right, on the Zeppay, your salary would be a cost of acquisition. So the difference between the sell price and the buy price, which was your, salary, would be the amount on which you would be charged capital gains. Yeah.
So in case of, if the Bitcoin is being gifted to you and then you can cash it.
So
there
gift,
is no transaction, then there is nothing that you have.
gift again, is not taxable when you receive it from a close relative, like if your father, mother, brother, sister. There is a definition. I'm not sure who all are included in that. Immediate relatives, they gift you, that amount is fully
So
taxable.
this could be a case, somebody bought it 5 years back, gifted it to you, and then you get it in cash. Then
वो
what?
customs.
You're talking about defining your cost basis. So the day that you receive the Bitcoin, you have to establish your cost basis at that point. Once you've received it, your cost basis is established. When you sell it, the differential and your capital gains will be paid on the
So
differential.
then, sir, somebody bought it 7
But-
years back
but-
or 8 years back.
So
There was no transaction, because most of the time, at times, to be honest, it happens through cash.
But if we keep transacting, if it become ubiquitous and we keep transacting using Bitcoin,
We have a
then
problem.
we have a problem.
So in the United States, this is something that is being discussed right now, and saying, can we eliminate this capital gain requirement on any transaction below $600? Why $600? I don't know, but that's what's being discussed right now.
Whenever there is an interface between fiat and crypto to fiat, so forget about capital gains. So how come we have got this figure of 18% GST? So because there is, it's nowhere in the law, it's not regulated. So is that like something which experts have come up with? So because even if you see jewelry, it's not taxed as 18% GST, so it's much lower tax. So why not 2%? Why 18%?
So the GST law has something called a schedule of rates, right? So the schedule of rates now has a residuary clause for goods that are not defined elsewhere. That rate is 18%. So given that cryptocurrency is not defined anywhere, a conservative view to take would be that it's the 18%. But as I said, again, there's no precedent. But this is what is the typical.
So but it is neither a good nor a service.
No, that is not. See, there is a residuary clause for both goods and services,
So,
which
but
is.
it is not good on nor service.
STT rather than goods and service. I mean, it as I said, it's in alcohol and petrol department.
There is a judgment of European
Yeah, hi.
Justice. There is a judgment last year from the European Court of Justice that no capital gain tax will be charged on bitcoins because we don't recognize it as a commodity. So there are different views, different people have taken, and India also. See this. Anybody advising to pay capital gain tax, somebody is advising to pay income tax. These are all precautionary measures we are taking that tomorrow if we fall into trouble, these are the excuses we can take in a court of law. But as such, no department of any tax body, income tax or Central Board of Direct or Indirect Taxes, they can raise any tax demand from you because they do not recognize it as a currency and they do not even recognize it as a commodity. So these are all, whatever we are discussing, are precautionary measures from our own side. There is no liability in India as such.
So Indian law doesn't differentiate between electronic versus physical. Like, for example, any document, a letter is same as email, or contract is same as digital contract, or invoice is same as electronic invoice, or so the courts look at it the same way. So in case of currencies, wouldn't this be an electronic currency technically? And because the Indian law's currency is defined as anything which is fungible, and no, it doesn't use the word
Currency
fungible.
is much more complicated than a
But
contract.
It does. The RBI law goes into the extent of saying that even credit cards are currency, and they don't go and say कि ये currency है, ये currency नहीं है. Anything which is issued by RBI is a currency of Indian currency. Otherwise, everything else is a foreign currency.
इसमें है ना एक बहुत सिंपल एग्जांपल है. बिफोर डीमोनेटाइजेशन, इफ यू रिमेंबर, पेटीएम में जो लोग ट्रांजैक्शन कर रहे थे वो लोग टैक्स चार्ज नहीं कर रहे थे because government never knew that you invested 10 rupees in Paytm, you did 50 transactions, and at the end of the day, whatever money you took out in the bank was only taxed. Rest of the money in the transactions was not taxed. No service tax, nothing. So one of the purpose of bitcoins is not just to make money. There is also a purpose of anonymity for buying things. Like we have been using it for purpose of anonymity. So if you can only tax when the anonymity cover is taken out. So as long as the transaction is anonymous, the government cannot tax. जैसे अभी क्रेडिट कार्ड के अंदर आपको कैशबैक पॉइंट्स आते हैं. अभी 1.5 साल पहले का जजमेंट है कि दे विल ऑल्सो बी टैक्स. बिफोर दैट दिस कैशबैक पॉइंट्स वर नॉट टैक्स्ड. जो आपको 1000 रुपीज आपको आया, 200 कैशबैक आ गया, दे वर नॉट टैक्स्ड. So likewise in bitcoins also, as long as there is anything which is defined to be taxed, it should not be taxed.
So there's a clear law which says that any foreign currency has to be bought through an authorized dealer.
Yes, but where have they defined bitcoin as a currency?
So they've not defined that Zimbabwe's currency is a currency, or any foreign currency is a currency.
Look at the definition of currency. Please look at the definition of currency.
Okay.
You had a question. Yeah, go ahead.
So,
Go ahead.
so
We have a real life use case where we're going to, in 2 weeks, experiment e-commerce sales using altcoins. Not Bitcoin because the transaction fees are too high, but we're enabling Litecoin and potentially Dogecoin. So we have a candy company, and we are going live in 2 weeks. Now, one of the things that I've been talking to my lawyers and accountants about is how do we account for receipt of Litecoin. So let's say our packet is 200 rupees. You receive 200 rupees equivalent at the market rate for Litecoin. That is then transacted through and maybe credited in INR into your rupee account through ZepPay. So we're trying to figure out, can we actually legally send an invoice to the customer in crypto?
Domestic barter is perfectly legal. So if you, within the territory of India, you want to exchange anything for any other item other than, fiat currencies, that's perfectly legal. The issue comes in cross-border barter. So if you are sending your candy abroad and receiving money in Litecoin, there's an issue because when you send your candy abroad, it's technically an export. Any receipt from an export needs to be received through authorized banking channel in convertible foreign currency. But within the territory of India, if you do it, as you rightly pointed out, when the Litecoin hits your account, whatever is the INR equivalent, you can account it at that, to that extent. Or, but there is no issue, there's no legal issue in issuing and doing a barter within the territory of India.
So then you can essentially issue an invoice in Litecoin. Or
yeah, just mention...
You still raise it in INR.
You can mention the Litecoin and mention the INR equivalent as well.
Okay.
Because GST definition will not.
Yeah, because essentially GST would have to be charged.
Say if in India, we are just like we manage a fund as in just like a mutual fund for the stock market shares. If we try to manage a portfolio and ask some HNIs that, hey, if you invest into a portfolio, since we have a little better knowledge of crypto and altcoins and we have chosen some of the coins which can give better returns, how will we be liable to the HNIs or to the customers that what should we give them in return as in something
so,
like...
Last question, which I didn't touch upon because of lack of time. Quick 2-minute overview on ICO and legalities around ICO.
Okay. There are two sides to this. There's one which is called a utility token and something else that's called a securities token. In India, securities are regulated by SEBI. For those who are not aware, a security is anything that is backed by an asset or, it's an income generating asset to some extent. So for instance, if I launch a token which says buy digital gold, one token represents say 1 ounce of gold, that would be a security because it's backed by an asset, right? A utility token is something which is akin to a license to use a service or a right to use a service in the future. So there are many ICOs which say that, they issue their tokens, 1 year later they use the funds to develop their software platform, then you can use the tokens on their platform as a means of payment. This is a utility token. In India, from our view is that there are not too many restrictions when it comes to utility tokens, but with securities tokens, there are a variety of complications like ensuring, for instance, you don't sell the token or solicit investors to invest in the token beyond a number of 200 investors a year, because then it triggers, triggers compliances under both the Companies Act and under the Securities Contracts Regulation Act. So if you want to hedge fund that you were referring to, you would not be able to issue the ICO token to more than 200 people in a year without triggering those requirements like issuing a prospectus, etc. But with a utility token, one issue which is as of yet sort of unresolved is in a sense that there is something in the Companies Act called a deposit. So if I take a prepayment from a customer, I will have to ensure that my service or good is rendered within a period of 1 year. Otherwise, it triggers again a variety of compliances. So if somebody does an ICO for utility token, collects the amount, will that amount be deemed to be a deposit after 1 year? And then when that token is in turn traded on exchanges, what happens to the holders of those tokens? This is something that I think the law needs to evolve a bit before we can clearly answer these questions. But I think that was a...
Awesome. Thank you for that explanation and thank you for the lovely panel.